Changing Times, Changing Worlds, which brings you the Wednesday show, Otherworldly, with and I am your host, Chipicon. Tonight my guest is Sean Kane, aka Starwolf. I might call him either interchangeably. He is a shaman, witch, professional psychic, Reiki Master, metaphysical engineer, and soldier of fortune. And he also knows a lot of science and engineering, which allows him to take a overall view. He says, as a witches like magpies will steal from anybody, and he combines it all. He works sometimes with his wife, Catherine, Foresight, and I will put a link to Foresight below. Because once an event's over, the Facebook tends to lose it. The topic for this show is the defense against the dark arts, because we really we mess ourselves up so badly by making dumb mistakes. He was on last fall and did defense against the dark arts. There we go. I'm going to wait until more people are here to put a link for that one so that everybody can go and look at that one. There may be a little bit of duplication because we really need to, there's some basics that everybody needs to know. Yeah. And so I am going to say, give it a shot. Okay. Feel free to take it away. I'd say start with a review of what you feel the basics are that every poor dumb schmuck ought to know about defensive dark arts. Give us the first year.
Okay, let's start with the obvious one, which is defense is always easier than offense in a magical conflict. Passive defense is easier than active defense. So we're going to start with how to passively defend your house. Now, a lot of people are familiar with the concept of casting a magic circle before a ritual. The problem being, most of those are set up that they come down. Warding a place, and that's what most people are interested in because it's my house, my apartment, my this, my that, is similar, but it requires a little more bits and pieces other than just a couple of candles and a lot of intent. Specifically, excuse me, my brain is a little bit foggy because I've been outside in ridiculously hot, muggy, unhealthy air. To start off,
I was going to say the passing storms are playing havoc with the air pressure too, which does affect a lot of.
And we haven't had those yet down here. Theoretically, we're supposed to, but I have this awful feeling I'm going to go out tomorrow and I'm immediately going to feel like I've had too much tequila and none of the fun that goes with it. Oh well. You laugh, but I've spent the last 3 days feeling hungover. Oh. So, yeah. And our electric bill is going to be through the ceiling because we have all the air conditioners in the house blasting.
Breathing is good.
Yes, it is. And breathing without feeling like you're drowning in your own mucus is even better. But the trick with defending a building is, as I often say, first you banish, then you ward. I've seen far too many people. They set up the circle and then they start to banish. And guess what? The stuff you've got has no place to go.
You seal it all in.
Yep.
First you seal it and then you banish it. Brilliant. Okay.
Yes, or as an old Victorian ghost story said at the end, now we're locked in for the night. You literally end up locking all the nasty stuff in. And
I apologize to everybody I just insulted by laughing.
No, it is the biggest beginner bonehead mistake I have seen in too many circles, in too many attempts to ward a building, too many attempts to set up unless you're setting up like a 6-foot quick defensive perimeter because there's something after you, then you know, you got to clean before you shut the windows. So step one, open all your windows and doors. If you're in an apartment building, just open the windows and then use whatever means you have to banish, whether it's sage smoke, smoke of rosemary if you've got ghosts. The other possibilities are if you're in a building with way too many overactive fire smoke detectors, you can't do that because you will just end up having to deal with the damn alarms going off and you explaining to the people around you what's going on. So what you do is you basically you can make sage tincture or rosemary tincture. So you hie yourself to the local dollar store or Ocean State Job Lot, which is where I harvest most of my herbs. You buy yourself a bottle of powdered sage. If you can get leaf sage, it's even better, but powdered works just as well. You get yourself a bottle of rosemary. You also pick up 2 bottles of I'll get to that. Basically of unscented rubbing alcohol. Now, admittedly, over the last year, that's been kind of hard to get hold of, but it is now coming back. You also need a couple of clean jars that'll hold the alcohol. You put the herbs in the jars. You pour in the alcohol. And you wait about 24 hours, and you're going to discover the alcohol has turned a dark olive green. You can then put it in a spray bottle and spray yourself. Oh, I realized you couldn't see my hand doing the spray. You spray starting at the lowest portion of your house. In this case, it was the basement, then the first floor, then the attic, going counterclockwise. You invoke clockwise, you banish counterclockwise, banishing all the negative energy, negative spirits, bad mojo, this, that, and the other, until you have reached the highest point you can get to in your building. Then you ward. But as Chipicon just mentioned, don't have to use sage, you don't have to use rosemary. You don't have to use copal resin smoke. You can use sound. I do that a lot because Kathy is asthmatic and it would smoke would hurt her. So you can use a bell, striking it regularly, not necessarily ringing it. We're not talking ding dong school. We're talking what in ritual magic is called a pollutionary. I like to use either a Tibetan replica ganta, which is a ritual bell, which can also be sung. You take the wooden stick they give you and you run it around the edge, and the bell starts to vibrate, just like the bit where you wet your finger and do the edge of a wine glass, produces the same effect. Or you can use a Tibetan singing bowl. My kit has a really small one, about yay big, that I bought at a rock shop. God, it must be more than 10 years ago, but it is relatively easy to find. Indeed, I wouldn't, only because you're going to be walking, and a wine glass, you might trip and drop it, and then you got broken glass. But I suppose you could. If you're just doing, say, one room, you put it in the center and you just play it. Or you could really get crazy and could have several, and you could start doing saber dance, like something off the old Ed Sullivan show. Everybody here so far is old enough to remember that.
I am.
So am I, and I wasn't very old when I saw that happen, but even so. But the idea is you are pushing everything out of the building. You then, starting at the top floor and going to the basement, you start shutting windows and doors to keep things out. Or if you're not by yourself, while you're coming down, somebody else can be coming up, shutting windows and doors to meet you. Because this doesn't always have to be a 2-person operation. Okay, next step is warding. Now, on our house, we have like 3 layers of wards. We have the interior ones that are set up in the basement where the basement walls come together. Thankfully, they are almost on the cardinal points. So I started years ago when we bought the house. Kathy went out to get a locksmith to change the locks, and I cleansed and warded the house. What is in the corners are, let's see, I started out with just quartz crystals because that's what I happen to have available. I've since added rose quartz and pyrite and some tachyon technologies stuff to increase the amount of positive energy in the house. Seems to have mostly worked. I went around, this time going clockwise. I invoked the cardinal points only, as opposed to, just doing it, in the air. I purposely put the energy into the quartz crystals, which now act as repeater stations. So they took up the energy and they're going. That's also very useful for casting a circle when it's outside and windy and the candles won't stay lit. Though these days we have battery tea lights that don't blow out, so that works just as well. You just have to remember to switch them on as you go. So that basically is the outside, or the inside. The outside, also at the corners, I buried a couple of years later pieces of quartz included pyrite. Now, pyrite is, of course, an iron sulfate. Iron is perhaps one of the best tools for dealing with negative energy, certain entities that go by the name of the Fae, and pretty much anything else that doesn't have a species-specific allergy. Further out on the corners of our property, there are four little, does everybody remember the troll figures that were really popular when we were kids? Once again, you and I both raise our hands. Well, there's four little troll dolls with quartz crystals tied to them with dental floss that are buried at the cardinal points. And for those, I had to make a deal with Mama Shark to get some of her children to guard our property. So if you look at our house, in the astral, there are four shark-toothed little trolls standing guard, each with a spear in its hand. That's the serious, do not come on this property if you intend us ill.
Sounds
Unfortunately,
like there are dragons on the hotels where we've had earlier changing times, changing world.
there are gargoyles.
Yeah.
Basically. I just didn't feel like spending the money that Design Toscano would charge for some of their better outdoor gargoyles. Plus, these are buried so that short of a major problem, they're not going to get dug up. When we finally die and somebody else has this place, it's going to be interesting.
Sean?
I hear something
yes?
about, didn't you have to shift? You discovered one had been accidentally shifted and had to fix it.
Yeah, we had a leak in the basement, and it was a combination of a leak in the basement and finally getting our driveway paved. And I realized that they had dug up one of the exterior wards, so I had to replace it and basically reward the outside. Kathy noticed the leak because at that time she was dealing with a really negative boss, and the energy was creeping up. Now these
Sean,
have the advantage that people.
I had a couple questions based on, I've been taking notes here frantically as you go, and I'm thinking about how we would ward where we live, which adds layers, literally, of complication, which is that we're in the first floor apartment of a two-story building with a basement. Now, what I'm warding against is the landlord. So, yeah, you see Jen smile there. Yeah, she's the source of all the negative energy in this house.
And she lives on the second floor.
Well, then
so
I am going to make then what you do at that point is you just ward interior. As close to the cardinal points as you can. But you then take a little bit of water, drip a little bit of dragon's blood ink into it so that you get a really, really, you can't even see it, level of solution. And what you do is you ward the ceiling in the middle of the house, and you ward the base, ward the floor in the middle of the house. I would draw a pentacle with a paintbrush and do the same. And then, you know, that way you've created a, basically, as opposed to this, which is kind of a cylinder or a set of walls, because I did eventually ward up in the attic. That was one warm, uncomfortable bit of magic. You've created basically a sphere. Well, maybe a kind of flattened sphere, an oblate spheroid that you're living in. The advantage, I would also suggest get a set of foo dogs. You know what I'm talking about, the Chinese thing that they call lions, they're actually dogs.
Yeah.
And place them by the primary entrance to your house. You can get real little bitty ones like this tall.
Oh, I'm sure.
At most Chinese import stores. And we actually have multiple sets because we have one set in front of the front door, one set in front of the kitchen door, which is where we actually come in and out mostly. And we also have a pair that are set up next to the router where the landline comes into the router, because that's an entrance that people keep forgetting about.
I just suddenly had a little light going in my head when you said that, because we have right in the corner, right in the living room, we have where the FiOS line comes in, and that's basically the major pipeline in and out of this house for information.
Yeah, you don't necessarily have to worry about the water pipes, because your sewer pipe is made out of iron, and most of the water pipes coming up to the house, until they actually branch off and become copper, are made out of iron as well. So nothing's going to swim up your water pipe and come out the either the faucets or the toilet and attack you.
Right, and the gas lines are also, for as long as I can remember, been made out of black iron.
Right.
So now, as far as banishing, you mentioned bells. We have a quite lovely Tibetan singing bowl, one of the real hand hammered. And I was thinking that because, as much as I'd love to smudge with sage, I don't know it would do well for Jen. So,
well, we also have the sage essential oil, which
we do have.
I'd mix a little bit of that with water or alcohol to make a solution rather than using the stuff straight. You don't want somebody taking that. Like I said, I use a sage tincture in a spray bottle.
Right, and
that's easy enough too.
We bought one of those years ago when we were first. I mean, I've got a bottle. I think we got it Earthward back in New Hampshire, which was a long time ago, and it's basically a sage tincture. And I'm just going to make a fresh batch and put it in that.
Okay.
Yeah, that's simple enough. Like I said, rubbing alcohol and either leaf or ground sage. You do not use white sage. I don't think I've ever actually burned white sage. I've always used culinary sage.
Oh, well, it's interesting because what I've got is what I've got currently is a smudge wand we got many years ago also, which is white sage and sweetgrass. So
chop it up, stick it in the bottle, and let it marinate for like 48 hours. It's probably dried out, so it's going to take a while.
Yeah. Well, yes, that's what I'm concerned about is the essential oils in it. You know, in the case of the smudge wand having just oxidized out, or in that ancient tincture, which may have a better chance of having survived.
Yeah,
but
especially if the bottle's been sealed and not been, in direct sunlight.
No, it's been in a box someplace for forever. So it's never
probably. Then if you can still smell sage, it works.
Okay. All right.
We're also
moving soon, so warding here isn't as much the issue. So.
Well,
Yeah.
I want to know the basics though, because for all we know, we're going to end up in a first floor apartment over a basement again. So
More than likely, and as I said, ward in the center of, as close to the center of
mhm.
the apartment as you can. I realize there will be walls in the way, and
Oh
you might
yeah.
have to do it in a door, because I know to get to the actual geographic center of the house, that's under a support beam. And there ain't no way I'm
Oh,
jacking the house up long enough.
I was about to say, you don't really want to mess with load-bearing structures while you're doing this.
No, 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 no. However, if you ever need to ground out the lolly columns that hold up the
Hmm.
load-bearing beam, those are also iron, and they go about
Hmm.
5 feet straight down into the earth. Hug a lolly column if you can't get out and hug an oak tree. When we held
Interesting.
ceremonies in the basement, that was the standard. Somebody was having a bad, here, hug the column. Why? It's iron. It'll ground you. Indeed, a lot of everything in the house is tied into that lolly column. I used to joke with Kathy that I want to jack the building up, bore out the concrete in the lolly columns, and fill them with crystals so that we would have 3 gigantic
Ooh.
crystal wands. Yeah, that's not a good idea. Yeah, she basically, for some reason, I don't know, she just sat down on the idea of me jacking the house up 20 feet for a couple of days.
Well, I understand she might have some objections, but I'm wondering what you're going to do with these ones. Are you going to shoot down satellites or something? Yes. That's
No, just power the grounding system. If I want to shoot down satellites, I'll build an orgone projector.
You
okay.
can use the Jewish space laser.
I need to get a button for that one. I need to get 2. I need to get one for myself and one to send to an ex-girlfriend of mine who lives in Israel.
Okay.
Because my girlfriend Hannah would get a kick out of that.
I do want to pursue the question in the chat about warding
technology.
About internet, because the internet has been our primary interaction with the outside world, and also
the truth is
mirrors, which I think mirrors are also a thing that.
Let's start with the internet. The good news is, outside of the food dogs, you don't have to do much, because most internet connections come with something called a radio frequency choke built in. Now, that is a series basically of iron rings wrapped in wire connected up to the ground on most internet connections. So nothing's going to get past that unless it's really powerful, in which case you're going to probably be smelling smoke as everything in the house melts down, and then you run. But
okay.
Mirrors, well, think about it for a moment. We are staring into our magic mirrors, communicating over the miles. It's kind of fun. We're literally, we should almost call our tablets our Palantir, or Palantir. Thank you, Tolkien.
Yeah.
But
yeah, and I don't think I've ever in my life spent so much time looking at myself.
Yeah,
that's a novel experience.
The good news is I'm in just a little box up in the corner. I get to watch all of you. Pardon me, mucus-induced hiccups. Today outside in my job, it was 105.
Oh.
Yes. So mirrors. Mirrors are both useful and can be a problem. Mirrors can be used to reflect energy away, but they can also act as doorways from what amounts to the other side. Now, I'm not talking the spirit world. I'm talking kind of it's like the area in a theater behind the curtains, specifically behind the backdrop. Mirrors make very good gates to travel to places. Right, an interplanar space. Thank you. My brain is truly cooked into an Italian dish called cervelle. So what you do if you're going to hang a mirror, well, in my case, I would probably paint algae on the back of the mirror before I put it up. I would also, once again, use that really, really thin solution of dragon's blood and paint the same thing on the front so that you don't, and the main problem is every time you clean the mirror, you're going to have to do that again. You know, that's
Right. Now,
if your mirrors are like ours, algae, the thing that looks like a Y with an extra tine in the middle.
Oh,
That's
okay.
used for setting boundaries.
Oh, duh, it's a rune.
You can
Yes.
Google runes. So
Yeah,
It's,
that's all right.
among
I've
other
got
things, a
reference.
rune for setting boundaries. You can use pretty much any symbol you have for warding and setting boundaries. I use algae because, gee, heathen witch. I use runes whenever I can. You could also, if you have Rune Valder, you could use the ceiling symbol to permanently, ceiling symbol and the permanent symbol to just permanently seal the mirror. The advantage of putting algae on either side is if something comes through, it's going to keep bouncing back and forth. Can't get out either side.
oh well.
Yeah. It's like, yeah, if the mirror suddenly shatters for no reason, you had something coming in and it got trapped and it vibrated to the point where the glass gave way. It was much easier when mirrors were backed with silver as opposed to the aluminum that they're backed with today. It is an awful trap, but if you're coming in through a mirror to do nasty things in this house, I want it to be an awful trap. Also, what's very good for warding areas, steel camping mirrors, because those don't shatter.
But they reflect.
Yeah, so, but if you're putting up steel camping mirrors, you can paint algae on them in some nice red paint on both sides and hang them up. Say, have one reflecting the door. Now, this is a little bit of feng shui. Kathy's more of the expert on that, but so that there are certain things that are allergic to their own shape or their own image. I really like using other creatures' idiosyncrasies against them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we've got a lot of various feng shui bits hanging around, especially the doors. We've got flutes and strings of brass cash coins in a couple of places to keep out negative and attract prosperity. Let's see what else. As far as warding the internet, like I said, once you've got the foo dogs in place, and make sure you get an actual set, because a lot of times all they do is they sell the male dog, which is the one with his paw on the energy ball.
Mm-hmm.
A full set is the male, which has like I said, it has an energy ball under its upraised paw. The other one is the female, and you can tell because it has a foo dog. It's basically got its paw coming down on a puppy, a foo dog puppy that usually has the "but mom" look on its face. A complete set works best. And you put them on either side of either the router or the cord coming in if you have a landline connection, which we do. Advantage, if the power goes out, we can still make phone calls. But yeah, which reminds me I have to change the battery in the router. It's been beeping. Probably, well, it's old, but that keeps things. Now, that won't stop you from inviting things in. You go to some particularly weird spaces, it will not protect against computer viruses, malicious code. I've yet to run into code that actually behaved like it was sentient. Give it another 20 years and I'm going to have to come up with something to deal with that. I need a hacker. But that should keep things out. I realized that one day when I'd finished all the warding, and it's like, we still have an entrance to this house that we haven't warded. So they now sit under the little raised platform that our now dead Dell computer sits on, because that's where the cable connection for Kathy's computer goes. Now, what was that last one? I'm sorry. Let me go over to chat. Okay. I've never had that happen. I've had a few YouTubes that have made me want to throw up, but those tend to be done by vegans, by radical vegans or PETA files, PETA files. So
Okay.
that's how you ward your space. As I said, in an apartment, you just got to go a little bit further. I had to do that basically when we were living in Meriden in the 3rd floor of a badly converted Victorian. And why we took the 3rd floor was the 2 floors below us, the 2 apartments shared a bathroom. And I got tired of that when I was in college. I don't want somebody walking in that I don't know when I'm trying to take a shower. But there, I didn't really need to ward the upper part because we were literally in the top floor. I guess that was the servants' quarters, or what they used to call a mother-in-law apartment back in the day. But I did ward the, did ward the floor, which thankfully roughly I couldn't quite get the middle. I had to kind of do it in the bathroom because that was as close to the center of the apartment as I could. We had half of the attic. The other half was an open space that could have been used for storage, but mostly because one of the windows was broken, it was full of pigeons. Well, plus when I moved in, we built bookshelves along the hallway that basically paralleled it and led from like the living room and bedroom into the kitchen, bathroom area. And it's amazing the insulating factor of a layer of paperback books.
Yes.
Because you could tell in the winter, you'd pull a book out of it and you could feel the cold coming out.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, been there, done that.
Yeah, we still have those bookshelves.
All right, now that you've covered the warding your area, how about warding your person?
Well, warding your person, let's start with, excuse me, as I unzip a little bit and pull out the visible stuff.
Well, I'll whip this out.
Yeah, let's start with this. This also functions, it's going to be interesting. For those of you who can see it, it's a little obsidian skull. This goes for several of the Dark Ladies. Hela, La Santa Muerte, Ixchel, you fill in the blanks. Hecate, even though I and the old Titan don't necessarily get along, it's something to do with her and Odin not getting along.
Okay.
You know, it's I don't do anything for
practices.
Yeah, well, I think it's more of a professional rivalry, but I've noticed that whenever I'm at an outdoor invocation to Hecate, the way it starts to thunder, lightning, and storm. So I just stay away from them. Plus, the place they hold Harvest Gather, they have an area, it's kind of like a theater area devoted to Hecate. I don't know why, but I notice every time I go in there, the air, it gets very airless and I start getting sick to my stomach. The number of times I've had to leave that particular area and not throw up has been amazing. But let's see, there's also a Thor's hammer. The transitional one that, I'll give you some more, let's see. Yeah, there's the pendulum. Where is everything else? Here we go. I've got a steel Valknot, and I wear stainless steel mostly because my skin chemistry eats pewter to the point where I have to buy a new one every year. Old-fashioned brass pentacle, bought up in Salem every couple of years because these also begin to wear very thin and start to crumble away. Let's see. A bronze transitional Thor's hammer. It's the one that you can either use as a cross or a Thor's hammer. The so-called wolf hammer. That's my normal everyday wear. There's also a dog tag style image of the magician from the Rider-Waite Tarot. But that's more because it's the only, well, I could have done the Hanged Man, but Kathy wasn't really enthusiastic about me wearing the knowledge acquired through self-sacrifice card. And I am more of, yeah.
Not going to spend any time hanging on the world tree, are you?
I've already been dead twice. I don't need to add a third.
Oh.
Do you have any other, you do crystals. I mean, we got to have you back and do a whole week thing on crystals, but suggestions for protective minerals.
Well, let's start with one of the new ones that is, the new improved crystal. That would be a substance called shungite, which is apparently it's a compound of hard coal and quartz to the point where the silicon dioxide crystals incorporate the carbon into their structure. Reason they discovered it was this was a coal mine up on the Karelian Peninsula in, well, depending on how far east you are, it's either Finland or Russia, depending on, it was originally Finland, now it's part of Russia, and someday it'll be part of Finland again, depending on what happens. But what they were discovering is the coal that came out of the mine wouldn't burn. Or if it did, it wouldn't burn the way coal burned. And they found it's very good for absorbing things like ionizing radiation, which is the stuff that say, X-rays, gamma radiation, which are, by the way, the same thing, as I found out when I was getting the cancer treatment. I didn't turn green and I didn't develop superpowers.
Oh, darn.
Yeah. But can also deal with the radio frequency stuff being put out by cell phones and tablets and things. The
sugar light does it?
The radio frequency energy put out by cell phones and tablets or computers.
The shungite protects against that.
Yes.
And where do you get that?
Most rock shops carry it these days. I got the shungite bracelet that I wear under normal circumstances at the East Coast Gem and Mineral Show, which is in Springfield, Massachusetts, the first weekend in August. For those of you who are familiar, it's on the site of the Big E. And what they have is they take the Better Living Center and the Young Building, which is the extension of the Better Living Center, and they fill it full of crystal dealers. The Better Living Center is full of retail. The Young Building is full of wholesale, but all you need is a what's sometimes called a resale license or a tax ID, and you get to waltz in there and you get amazing bargains. But that's where I got my.
I have to admit, I was thinking about the shungite, and I know how coal forms, and I know how quartz forms. I am just bending my brain trying to imagine what it would take to get a combination like that.
It would take a lot of pressure to basically use carbon and.
Yeah, it's got to be some kind of exotic metamorphic rock then.
Yes, it is. Well, if you think about it, coal is a metamorphic rock to begin with.
Well, yeah.
And indeed, its first cousin, jet, is an amazing material for soaking up negative energy. The really hard coal that they mine in England and use for jewelry.
Right.
Indeed, one of the best combinations for everyday wear is amber and jet beads together. What happens is the two of them together soak up negative energy and convert it to positive energy. So basically, the harder they hit you, the stronger you get. Let's see. There's the various forms of kyanite, black, green, orange, blue. The best one for protection is, of course, black kyanite, because it seems like black stones are the best protective ones. Those have the advantage that they do not need to be cleansed regularly. Other self-cleansing stones are black tourmaline, sometimes called, and I'm probably going to mispronounce it, schorl. That's something that's all through New England. I've got to restring them, but I have a set of bracelets that are alternating double terminated quartz crystals and pieces of black tourmaline. They're my, as I call them, shield bracelets, a la Harry Dresden.
Works for me.
Yeah. Problem is they've stretched out over the years and I need to sit down and restring them.
Can you spell squirrel?
Just call it black tourmaline. That's the easiest way.
Okay.
There are multiple colors of tourmaline. Black is the most common. It's also the cheapest.
Okay.
Right, but SCHORL, I believe.
Yeah. I'm a new age rock person. I'm not a mineralogist.
It's okay.
But that
Well, we have
is-
enough. We have a lovely slab of black tourmaline. I forget, I think Jen may have been the one to find it, but it's in the shape of, it's like a truncated triangle. So it's hexagonal, but not,
No,
and it,
well,
yeah. Never mind.
and it's got to be this big
Yeah.
and about a ½ inch
that
thick.
would be a good thing to set up somewhere near the center of your next living space.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, because that is one of the most potent energy, negative energies.
Yeah.
We once heard that the diameter of black tourmaline is what matters most, not necessarily the length of the crystal.
Right.
Right.
Mass means nothing in metaphysics. The advantage of small crystals is you can tuck them into places that people won't notice. But you put that one in the middle and you put a bunch of little ones, once again, you don't need anything much bigger than, the end of my little fingertip.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
It needs to be big enough that you're not going to suck it up in the vacuum cleaner.
Right. That's a good idea.
And if worst comes to worst, you tape it into the corners with painter's tape.
Mm-hmm.
Which means you're going to have to periodically renew it because the stuff does dry out and lose its stick up.
Oh, yeah.
But
We use that
will
sticky stuff to put crystal, like, I use it to stick things on, to put crystals in the corners of Alphonse Hospital room. Well,
Yeah.
So
there's also the blue tack that museums use to fix exhibits into place on shelves.
Yeah. There's a poster hanging goop.
Well, yeah, once again, you're going to be moving into a rental that I can do things here that you can't.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
If I want to pound iron, if I want to pound iron nails into the corners of the house, I can do it. That would cost you your security deposit.
Right.
It probably would, but I want to
keep it in the corners and.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to assemble a toolkit here, and know, if we ever find ourselves in a place where I can pound iron nails into the corners if I need to. But the idea of knowing, all right, I want to ward against this, because there's the general warding against all the nasty crap that's out there. And then there's the warding some very specific nasty crap. And
specific nasty crap requires knowledge of who or what you're warding against.
Yeah. I'm not
in my carry kit, for example, there is a little 5-dram vial filled with a mixture of poppy and flax seeds. Just enough to pour across a doorway when I'm trying to get away from something. That deals with Eastern European undead and the more obsessive compulsive members of the Fae.
Stop and count them.
And then they have to sort them and recount them.
Oh.
And if you're, that's why I have them mixed. Because they have to sort the poppy seeds from the flax seeds.
Nice.
I had a job once where I had to do something like that every once in a while. So I can see how it would confuse them.
Yes. And the idea is you seal the door until you can get your backside out of whatever building you're in that they are inhabiting and then come back with bigger firepower.
Mm-hmm.
I have in my, that lives in my pocket because my pockets are full of things, which is why I wear a trucker's wallet because there's no room for my actual wallet. There is my everyday carry kit, my witch's everyday toolkit, which includes some miniaturized versions of tools.
Mm.
For example, the wand is a Jor, Tibetan diamond thunderbolt charm that's about this long. The dagger is a Purba, Tibetan ritual knife. I'm also trained in Bon shamanism, so these work for me. The bell is something I actually got from Chipicon's daughters. I swapped a reading for it at one of the Wicked fairs. It's perfect because it's a little silver bell and it works.
Mm.
Ding, ding.
The little single, all you need is it just has to jingle. It replaced the little jingle bell that was in there before. It looks a lot better. The cup is a charm that I got from, oh God, no, I got that from Dragon's Treasure Chest. It's a functional little cup. It's made out of pewter. It's got a pentacle on the front, and you can actually put a couple of drops of liquid in it. Yes, my portable wards are Tibetan skull beads with a rose quartz bead super glued to the top of them. All of this stuff fits in what amounts to a the sort of case you carry makings for roll-up cigarettes in. Indeed, I got it at a what was it? I got it at a convenience store, which was carrying all sorts of stuff like that, and it's like, wow. And it rode in my pocket for so many years that the stainless steel actually began to rust.
Hmm.
Stainless steel will rust if it rides in your pocket 24/7 under all conditions, including sweating like a horse in a warehouse.
Yeah. There's probably a lot of thrift store finds you could use for that too.
Yeah, I mean, you could use an Altoids tin, but my problem with those is they tend to dent
Yes.
very quickly and they don't protect your stuff.
I was thinking
There's
I have a pouch for a diabetic testing kit that has all the little elastic hold things in place in little pouches.
Yeah, well,
Pockets.
what everything rides in these days is a similar pouch that was made for the military. It's got elastic loops that hold, let's see, there's the vial of mixed seeds. There is a vial of black salt for exorcism. That you might not be able to get because it's made by a friend of mine in Japan.
Oh.
And she's a Miko. It's called exorcism salt.
Okay.
Well, what she does is she writes exorcism sutras, she burns them, and she mixes them with a solution of sea salt and sets it out to dry.
Nice.
Then she busts it up, and she sent me a bottle a few years ago. There's white salt for purification. There is hex banner powder, which is a mixture of sea salt, powdered iron, which is getting hard to find. Thankfully, I have a big jar of it. I bought at a scientific supply store back when they had those things in malls. Powdered iron, garlic, and rosemary. That stuff you can either throw into the air or sprinkle on something. If it's an object, it'll pretty much short it out. There's a vial of corpse dust, but you don't want that because, well, that's kind of me specific.
Yeah.
And there's also a vial of what I refer to as Sealy mace, powdered iron. Put it in your hand, blow, and watch them start coughing and spitting up their equivalent of blood. Yes, I if I have to deal with a malevolent fae, I play rough.
Well, if they get malevolent, I'd like to actually move to some more malevolence. I mean, you mentioned the foolishness in the early 60s of witch wars and
Oh yeah,
such like.
this is where I learned a lot of it. I was one of. Yeah.
I just want to talk about what you do when some jackass, excuse me, is sending negative, if somebody's hexing you, cursing you, sending negative energy at you?
Well, first and foremost, you've got your first line of defense, which is your jewelry.
Yeah.
Your second line of defense is your awarded space that you can get a good night's sleep in, even if it's just the bedroom. The third line of defense is a little something I learned from a book of gypsy spells that somebody wrote that works very well. It is called freezing that person out. For that, you will need a plastic medicine bottle with your name, with the vital information peeled or soaked off. I learned the hard way that you don't leave your name on the damn thing. Learned the hard way. You will need a piece of paper bag paper, the stuff, grocery bag paper. You'll need some water, and you'll need your freezer. What you do is you write the person's name, if you know it, on the piece of paper. You fold it, you put it in the bottle, you fill the bottle with water, you cap it, and then you stick it in the freezer in the back behind that old bag of peas that nobody uses, that have been so freezer burned that they're now effectively dehydrated. You shut the freezer and you say 3 times, "Stay there and freeze for as long as I please." That pretty much, unless they have some serious supernatural aid, that pretty much stops them from dealing with doing anything bad about you. It freezes them out. It's kind of a binding spell, and unlike a lot of Wiccans, because I learned in the old hard days of the late 70s when people were bouncing hexes off of each other, New York in the 70s looked like Chicago in the 20s. Only we weren't using Tommy guns.
Well, there's that joke about Salem, Massachusetts, where they don't have most of the witches don't have enough room to keep a chicken because their freezers are all full of people they've frozen.
Yeah,
I've heard that one. Yeah.
One of the reasons I don't want to ever live in Salem. It's a nice place to visit, but I wouldn't want to live there. When I'm there as a visitor, they're all on company manners around me because they want to make money off of me.
So do you have any?
Unfortunately, my favorite store has now closed.
Which one's
Gypsy finally, New Eon down on Pickering Wharf. Gypsy finally closed.
So do you have other binding?
Well, let's see. There is the one where you, once again, write on the paper. You take a piece of basically the white cotton culinary twine.
Mm-hmm.
You basically knot it 9 times around the paper. You fold the paper, knot it 9 times around. And if you really want to get nasty, you put an iron nail in the middle as you're doing it. And each time you make a knot, you say, "I bind you, I banish you, I bind you." You do it each time you do the knot. And then you find some place private that nobody's going to go. You chuck it under a bush somewheres or in the back of a closet, preferably not one of your own. And then you say, "I throw you away." You can also be done. This can also be done by wrapping the paper in with the contents of a new spool of black thread. That one is best done on Tears Day. I wonder why. Because you're appealing to the ultimate cop.
God of justice.
Yes.
So any words of wisdom on the ethics of binding?
It's always better to do the counter stroke than the first stroke. I'm figuring once they've thrown something at you, the gloves come off and the claws come out. If you have access, you know where they live, you can always sprinkle a little hot foot powder or confusion dust where they're going to step.
Mhm.
I made some of that for Kathy when she was having boss problems, and for about a year, her boss couldn't come in and harass her in her office.
Well, that's good. And
Yep,
how does
and
one
that's
make
the
this?
well, you can find the formula in Sticks and Stones, Rocks and Bones.
Okay.
Indeed, I think if I had, yes. Ta-da!
Yeah. I
We can
like
borrow a lot.
I like conjure. It's very direct.
Yeah. I know several very spiritual hoodoo and conjure people, but once again, I learned from the Santeros up in Spanish Harlem. They weren't they were dealing in, oh, this is our spirituality. They were dealing in hexes and love spells and breaking hexes and uncrossing.
Okay.
God, give me the bad old days sometimes.
Well, you talk about old days, you're talking about that analogy with Chicago, and I suddenly envisioned these old cars roaring by and doing drive-by hexes.
You could theoretically do that. If you had
Yeah, I
if
thought
you had somebody else driving, you'd have to be in the back seat so that you could do it from the Kathy's got one student who does drive-by Reikiing.
okay.
That ends bad for him because he always ends up hurting himself later.
Ooh,
He finally got the hint after he in the middle of the night had a seizure and bit the tip off his tongue.
Ooh.
that'll wake you up.
Yeah, it did.
Okay.
Also, he acquired common sense. He got married.
Yes, if you can't have it internally, get it externally.
Yeah. Let me just check the time.
We didn't mention this time or this time yet. Would you give us a list of a couple things you think should be handled non-magically as opposed to magically?
Lawsuits. I mean, you can do magic to help break a lawsuit, but it's far better to set loose those soulless demonic creatures called lawyers.
Well,
I have
Greeks always did the curse tablets for. I mean,
the problem is
frequently
finding the lead. It's gotten harder and harder to find metallic lead.
Oh yeah.
Wheel weights aren't made out of lead anymore. Most fishing sinkers are made out of some sort of alloy. You can't buy plumber's caulk anymore.
Nope.
Because what you really need is you need a sheet of lead to do that.
Yeah.
Right. You would have to go to a scientific supply shop or a similar place.
Gun store where you can buy dead soft 100%. Yeah, but that stuff is expensive.
Yeah. Yes. Starwolf, our great cheapskate magician.
Well, it used to be you could go to a tire store and for literally not even the price of taking them away, they give you as many used wheel weights.
Oh yeah.
The problem is, once again, because of lead pollution in the environment, they're not. Wheel weights aren't made out of lead anymore. They're made out of antimony, and I don't know what the other materials are.
I'm trying to remember if it's like solder where they make it out of antimony and tin. But I'd have to seriously fact check that. But I know
that's not worth it. But I rarely need. I mean, I have, because of years of collecting, I have a certain amount of metallic lead at home. Among other things, I cast myself up. May the gods forgive me. I cast myself up 5 pounds of lead slingshot bullets because I used a shepherd's sling in the SCA, and I have lead bullets that I cast using a 4-ounce egg sinker mold.
You didn't write take that in Greek, did you?
No, I would love to find somebody who could carve me a soapstone mold that had that on it so that it read properly when you.
Okay, give us a good story of somebody who's a real doofus who attracted something really negative to themselves and preferably.
Oh, that would be a sort of a friend of my friend. I forget his last name, but Alex. I know a lot of Alexes these days.
Mhm.
Between Alex's and Alexis's, they've actually replaced Megan's as the most common in my friends list. He's a witch, and he worked as a pickup driver for a funeral home. You know, he's the one who'd go to the county morgue or the hospital morgue and pick up the body, and he kept picking up hitchhikers.
Spiritual or physical?
Spiritual,
Okay.
because there's a lot of nasty things that hang out in hospitals, not just ghosts of people who haven't moved on, who might actually decide they want to leave with this nice looking guy, but there are things that feed on the pain, the agony, the despair.
People were afraid of dying.
You know, exactly the fear of dying, the despair of losing a loved one, the pain that comes when you wake up and discover you're missing a limb, or, you know, they've just finished cutting bits out of you to save your life.
So what
And
happened
they like
to him?
Well, I had to give him the same lesson about 3 times about warding his apartment and double warding his door, because he'd come home and these things would walk in with him, because, you know, he can go through the wards. He built them.
So all they had
Friends
to do
can
was
come
stay really close.
They attached
Right.
to him outside, and then
They-
they come in with him.
They were attached to him like
Ticks?
leeches or ticks. Yeah,
Yeah.
leeches more, because they live off human energy, and they're not sentient beings. I call them feeders. They exist
Mhm.
in places. Well, I think the worst place in Connecticut is either the old Three Rivers mental hospital in Norwich,
Again.
or the Southbury Training School over in Southbury, Connecticut, which contained, among other things, one of the old-fashioned snake pit mental institutions.
Oh.
Uh-huh.
Oh boy.
Yeah, those are
Yeah,
good.
they once they built a middle school on the property.
Oh, middle
And if
schools
you
are
think
nuts
about it,
anyway.
right, what is the biggest non-traumatic source of fear and pain and angst and depression on the planet? A middle schooler.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know, because I was doing an SCA event there, and because it was what was it? It was 12th night. And because it was a ridiculously warm January weekend, they had a tourney outside. And then it was tourney and order meeting. So nobody came to the vendors section. Was a reasonably good lunch. Thorvald was part of the crew making it, so I knew it was going to be edible. But I just pulled off one of the malas, the sets of Tibetan prayer beads I wear, and I started telling my beads and going into a light trance. And then I noticed a smell like rotting garbage.
Oh.
And it went past me. First, I thought it was, okay, maybe one of the maintenance people brought a bag of really nasty lunch leftovers from the previous day past me. But yeah, I went back down, and I went back the other way, or back down, and it went the other way. And then it went back in the other direction again. And at that point, I opened my eyes and I asked one of the other vendors, has somebody been carrying bags of garbage past us? And the answer was, nope, there's been nobody in here. I think what it did was it scoped me out and realized I was not necessarily prey.
Mm-hmm.
Apex.
Because
Not good to eat.
exactly, apex predator.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm not an apex predator. There's many things in the supernatural world bigger than I am, but I am at least 2 steps higher than normal humans on the supernatural food chain. That's what happens when you die and claw your way out of an open grave. That's a story for the hospitality suite at changing times rather than over the internet.
Okay.
I'll remember that.
Yeah.
So what did you do about that particular?
Well, I didn't do very much. I just realized that it's probably tied to the spot. I realized what it was, and if I told the either the facilities people or anybody connected with the school what it was, they'd look at me like I'd grown a second head.
Yes.
But some of the
But
students probably did recognize it.
Well, they weren't there at the time because this was a Saturday.
Even if they
Yeah,
didn't recognize it, they'd be affected by its energy.
But
And let me point out that one of the graduates from that school was Adam Lanza, the Sandy Hook shooter.
Oh,
Right.
So he may.
I think he had a really nasty parasite.
that could be.
You know,
Yeah.
those things make having a tapeworm or dysentery seem positively benign. So that's one of my personal encounters with things. Main problem is when I walk into a room, a lot of the lower level supernatural threats tend to decide it's a good time to take the night off.
Yeah. Well,
I hear my mother
encountering the idiots who have a rider in them. They basically, and this happens at middle school age, but it happens a lot when people are miserable and hate their lives. If you hate your
they basically
they're-
set out a sign that says all you can eat.
well, they're to a certain extent, as I keep telling them, I can cast out your rider. I can cast out the spirit that is coming to take advantage of your wonderful sensory apparatus and your ability to eat, drink, smoke, and have sex. But unless you close the frickin' door, I can't keep them out of you. You have to tell you've got to close the door and say, yes, I want to live my life. And if your life is making you miserable now, freaking fix it, but close the damn door, because if they don't close the door, things are going to keep coming in.
Yeah.
that may be the first step to fixing it. Close the door, and then you can start making repairs if you get the lesson.
Yeah. The problem being you can give them a talisman that will seal them temporarily or even permanently, but eventually they're going to take the damn thing off to take a shower or to do something, and buffet spread.
Yep.
See, that's the main problem you have with the 21st century.
Okay.
The good news is if it's really a major problem, cultivate your local Orthodox church, preferably Russian. St. Peter and Paul up in Meriden. I used to have a long-term relationship with the archpriest because he was an old believer and understood this stuff.
Mm.
Catholics try to be too hip. Greek Orthodox, so-so. If they were trained in Greece, they probably will know about this. But most Russian Orthodox priests can at least do a basic exorcism. And it's nowhere near as complicated as the movie The Exorcist, because I don't think I've ever actually run into an actual demonic possession.
No, I haven't.
You know, the closest I've come was almost dating the actress that we were living on Long Island. One of my friends in high school was Long Island horsey folk. So was she. Really good rider. So, he tried to set the two of us up because I'm a witch. She was in The Exorcist. Of course you're going to get along. Of course, it didn't help that neither of us had a car at the time.
I think that an important thing to segue off of that one is people use spirit boards, what they call Ouija boards, for 100 years before there was any connection to the Ouija board opening up. And after the book and then the movie, suddenly they became, they're going to let something in. So
actually, I learned the hard way back when I was like 12, because they actually bought me one of those back when I was a kid.
I have one.
Yeah. I don't let them in the house because I dislike having the party line telephone of the spirit world. If I'm going to talk to something, I'm going to go into a trance, go out and find the specific being I need to talk to.
Yeah. I always, they don't have it anymore, but I always said it was like when people used to get the lists of the phone numbers for payphones on the street. and then you could
Yeah.
call up and see who would be wandering by and answer the payphone.
Yeah,
Now,
well, the war against drugs killed the payphone industry.
but they
because
don't
that's-
do that. They don't have them anymore because of cell phones.
Cell phones, and the fact that that was how dealers would get basically their orders.
But they, if you are calling randomly a phone that you don't know who it is, you're going to get people that
Yeah.
are probably not interested in anything but messing around with you. So,
Yep. It's the old, do you have Prince Albert in a can?
Yep. But it occurs to me it's past 9, so we probably.
Yeah.
Do you have any final things that you would like to tell people that they ought to?
Let's see. A good source of iron nails is Home Depot or Lowe's, or if you have one, your local Ace Hardware store. What you're looking for is the iron cut nails. They don't have any heads. They're square, and they taper down. Those are really good because you can tuck those in places, once again, in corners and stuff, and they won't roll.
Yeah.
Because they're squared off.
Right. Well, what you're describing sounds like what I used to know as cement nails, and they're actually hardened steel, so they're incredibly durable.
They're ferrous metal. That's all you need. Steel
Well, yeah.
or iron. Steel or iron will work. I know them as shingle nails.
Oh yeah, that too. Okay.
Yeah, I know them as shingle nails.
In the chat that says, "What is that door?" It's about 5 minutes ago. If you can define, shut the door. Shut the doors is basically if you are saying, "I don't want to use this body," somebody else will, because things without bodies love.
Oh yeah, they love that. They loved, especially given that when a person is traumatized, sometimes they basically, a piece of their soul heads off into the other worlds, wraps around the trauma and goes. If you have a lot of traumas, your spirit body can end up looking like a lace curtain.
Yeah.
And they move in like hermit crabs into shells.
And they say, "Oh, nobody's using this. I get to use it." And occasionally they come back and say, "Hey, wait a minute. I kind of wanted my own breakfast." And it's like, don't stop sleeping around on my boyfriend. And yeah, that you don't want somebody hijacking your body.
Exactly. And at least if they're sentient, you might be able to reason with them. But if they're the usual animal level intelligence, all that's going to do is make you more and more, your consciousness more and more miserable.
Yeah.
Because they thrive, as I said, and they reproduce like amoebas. When they reach a certain critical energy mass, they split into 2.
Yeah.
That's a really nasty.
Okay. Anyway, so I guess we ought to finish up. I'm going to say my usual thing, which is do think about coming to the Changing Times, Changing Worlds, which is going to be online again this fall on November 8th to 14th, evenings during Monday through Friday and all day long Saturday and Sunday. And tell your friends about, if you enjoy this type of discussion, if you enjoy talking about magic, if you enjoy talking about healing, if you enjoy talking about divination, if you have any suggestions for what you would like, go to the Facebook group and say, can you find somebody who could talk about, I'll look for them.
Yep.
So.
Well, as far as the tone, I try not to come off like Severus Snape teaching potions. I have yet to be able to put a stopper in death.
Good, but anyway, so that's it. And I'm going to be like, if anybody got any last questions, I'm gonna look at the chat, and or you can unmute yourself and ask.
No, I'm good. I had everything covered I wanted to know about. So thank you, Sean.
You're welcome. And you're welcome to Tavin.
And I will come back. I will have you back. I want to hear you talk about crystals Maybe I bet Jenny would
No
love
problem.
to talk with you.
Oh,
Shall
yeah.
we-
It's neck.
Yeah,
Shall
I've
we-
been
shall
looking
we
up
think
all the
about,
new age shops, and I found an awesome crystal store near us, so I'm excited.
let's say the last Wednesday in July?
Okay, I'll put you down.
I can clear my calendar.
Okay, last Wednesday in July. And
I'm interested in this concept of everyday carry and maybe going deeper into that.
Oh, I've taught
Well,
that at Changing Times before.
Changing
That's a
Times
little
is
more
great.
hands-on than I like to do over this.
Oh,
because
okay.
I empty out my pockets and I let you see. I pull
There you
out
go.
Well,
I
maybe
pull
we
out
do
what
a
I
show and
refer to
tell
as
after
my
our necklaces and
VPRD Field Agent's Vest,
Hmm.
which is a
Okay.
carrier vest loaded with tools and powders and a couple of spray bottles full of things, which I should really check and make sure that they haven't evaporated.
Hmm.
Maybe
Fill them.
2022. We
Yeah.
can get you to do that again because I
No
love
problem.
the everyday carry.
I will be glad to do that one because it's one I could literally teach just by walking into the room and emptying out my pockets.
Yeah. Yeah. This is,
Okay.
maybe we
Oh,
don't
and
need
by the
as
way,
much
that
stuff
does
as,
not include the proper caliber of silver bullets to use. That's an entirely different lecture that I'm not doing at Changing Times unless you really,
Projectile
really
weapons would be another matter altogether. Yes.
So I will tell you
Fine.
this. The best tool you could have for that is a Remington 1896 pump action shotgun in the trench gun mode because it'll take a bayonet loaded with
Okay.
steel, because you can get it these days, steel buckshot.
Hmm.
Actually, steel birdshot because it throws a bigger spread of pellets.
Smaller
right.
pellets.
Well, Morgan Daimler was talking about, dealing with a water horse, and it's like, yeah, but when you get too close, you get stuck to it. Well, I might lose the bayonet, but long before it gets to jump in, I'd have emptied at least 2 rounds right into its body.
Hmm.
Yeah, I work with it deals with the Fae. I work on the idea if they stay on their side of the line, I will stay on mine. If they're benevolent, I will honor them, and if they're malevolent, I will destroy them.
And and don't invite them into your yard to play with your children. So,
No,
anyway,
the
so
Victorians
next
have much to answer for.
I am thinking of doing the magic in food, how you can use your magic to do spells and change your energy. That's what I'm thinking. of.
Cuisinomancy,
Hmm. That sounds interesting.
because everything you need is in a good gumbo.
Oh yeah, that.
I just-
or
I
a
just
curry.
borrowed one from Terry Pratchett.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Okay. So you said that last Wednesday. So I'm going to
The last Wednesday
stop.
of July. I'm
Where
thinking
is
we should
my-
just, unless you can get more speakers, I'm willing to do this to the end of the year.
Yay.